extra extensions to our DSP for computer vision and computational photography, improved our ISP and so forth. So when all is said and done, you have a product that's much better in terms of power, much better in terms of performance, really good camera quality in low light, and you're seeing a lot of traction with respect to the OEMs. So there's been several announcements already. There's more to come. The chip itself is in 14 nanometer FinFET. So in addition to the design itself, we have a big process improvement. We also put in an upgraded modem, and we also put in added security. So you'll see it if you walk through the Qualcomm booth. We have Safe Switch, so we partner with AVG, so you can remotely access or disable your phone. We have machine learning for the first time. So we're working with Avast. So if you detect known malware, that's one thing. But if you have malicious behavior from an app, let's say it's detecting that you're sending and receiving texts, but you don't see text on your display, or something scraping your screen, right, running in the background. Those are warnings for which we have an API. We tell the security software, and it flags the user, hey, this is running, this is happening, is this something you authorize or not? So there's a number of key innovations in the 820, and we're seeing a lot of great design win traction of it. In addition to power, of course, we have Quick Charge 3.0, so we can charge your phone in about a half an hour up to 80%. Basically improvements across the board. So there's announcements from Samsung, LG, LUTV, Sony, TCL, so they're out there now. There'll be some additional improvements or some additional launches as time progresses. In terms of cores, I could go in and talk about in detail. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave it to your Q&A since you can't see anything. Instead, listen to me ramble on. So I have lots of cool slides on all its power performance improvements. One of the trends you're seeing at the show is the application of virtual reality applied using a mobile device. So of course there's virtual reality linked to a PC, but we strongly believe in mobile virtual reality. And so whether it's the launch from TCL on Saturday, LG or Samsung yesterday, you're starting to see mobile devices utilize VR. You're starting to see 360-degree cameras come out to capture video that can be seen in VR devices. We made a lot of optimizations in the chip specifically for VR to reduce, for example, the motion to photon latency, computer vision, the integrated sensor hub, and so forth. And so we really made a chip that's ideal for VR, whether you have your smartphone and you're sliding it in like a Google Cardboard or a Gear VR, or whether you take the chip and you do a custom HMD device or head-mounted display device for the purpose of VR. It actually is going to work pretty well for AR too, although ecosystem-wise, basically we have VR first and then AR will follow as several years down the line. So I can talk to any of the performance on the Snapdragon 800. Also, there's a number of peripheral chips accompanied with it. Of course, we do our own codec. That has a DSP, so you basically put the AP to sleep, and then it can recognize, a hello, wake up before you wake up the system. We have an ultrasonic fingerprint sensor, so basically uses sound waves, bounces off, looks at the ridges of your finger, bounces off the capillaries in your finger, make sure it's not a rubber finger, make sure you're alive, and that's an optional security mechanism for devices. So it's not in all the devices, but it's in some of them. Others could use, capacitive if need be. We're providing a speaker amp for the first time. Uses a SoundWire interface. So our wireless speaker amp is either 1.5 or 4 watts. That's added onto our codec. And like I said, if you could see the pictures, you'd be very impressed with all of the technology that's been put in our latest APs. So modem-wise, it's a 3XCA modem, up to 600 megabits per second download, 150 megabits per second upload. And I'm looking through the slides now if I have any of these related slides, but I guess it doesn't matter because you can't see them. So what I will do, because I don't want to put you to sleep staring at a blue screen, is why don't if you have any questions, I'm happy to address any questions. Otherwise, I can tell you anything about the 820 or anything about the announcements we've made with respect to security or the other chips that have been introduced. So let me see if you have any questions. If not, you're going to hear more while you stare at the blue screen. Yes?
I've got a question.
Yes. That's you. Yes.
The thing is that the previous of your flagship SoCs were based upon the generic ARM cores.
Yes.
When you switched back to your own in-house design, why is this thing going forward and back?
I go back and forth, back and forth. Yeah, so since I think it was like in 2008, 2009, we first introduced our own core instead of the ARM core. And the reason we designed our own CPU core is because we could get a big power performance advantage, basically. And so that's what we had for several years. Then we were working on our own internal design. And to be perfectly frank, Apple came out with a 64-bit CPU core. And unfortunately, sometimes marketing prevails over substance, and suddenly there was a strong demand for 64 bits. So we had the choice that we could accelerate our own core and get it in, or use an off-the-shelf ARM core. And we made the decision to wait for our own a little bit, put in some additional enhancements, and in the interim, utilize the ARM core. Now, I don't want to blame ARM for the fact that the power was higher than initially targeted. There's actually several reasons why the power was higher than initially targeted. And the 810 actually improved over time as there was process optimizations. But from a CPU standpoint, that's basically the story. Because you saw everybody basically come out with the 64-bit CPU around the same time. There's some changes in Android at the time to support 64 bits. So that's the change that was made. Unfortunately, the world that we live in sometimes, marketing wins over technical substance. That's why there's 8 cores and 10 cores and all kinds of craziness. Thankfully, what we're seeing that over time, our message of user experience and why user experience in terms of whether you're taking pictures in low light, or you're concerned about battery life, or you're concerned about security. These are the things we talk about over and over from a marketing standpoint. I think we've probably gone through the spec fatigue a little bit in the smartphone. So as you know, a race to a gigahertz, a race to dual core, a race to quad core, a race to 8 cores, and so forth. And Qualcomm generally wants to focus on user experience, but sometimes you get caught up in this spec race, and it's not one that we like. We'd much rather focus on doing what makes sense technically and what benefits the end user. And I think we're at that point now. For example, the Cryo core that we have in there has 4 cores. Our competitors have 8 or 10, 2 cores, who doesn't talk about them. It's not that that's negatively impacting us in any way, right? If you think about it, at the time, we went from 8 cores back to 4. So that was a bit of a bet. We bet that, especially in the flagship, that user experience is what matters, and power is what matters, and performance, not just a single-digit number, and so far so good.
And now, what's the plan for the next cycle? Is it going to be a custom design again?
I can't say. Maybe we'll keep things interesting for you, though. So we actually do every cycle. We look at what ARM has, we look at what we have, we decide what's optimum. We did sign up with ARM. ARM introduced a new license model. I don't know if you saw it. So it was introduced maybe a week ago, built on ARM Cortex technology. So Qualcomm has actually worked with ARM. And historically, you could either license an ARM core, or you could design your own core and make it fully software compatible. But ARM introduced a new license publicly built on ARM Cortex that's basically a collaborative effort between ARM and a silicon vendor where you can customize an ARM core. So we're the first to sign that over several years. But each cycle we look and figure out what's the optimum power performance, and we're going to go with that. Yes? Yes?
Okay.
Sorry, I should.
So instead of talking about the next cycle...
Excellent. Yeah, let's talk about this cycle.
Current cycle, is the Cry core something that's reserved to the high-end SoCs from Qualcomm, or will we see Cryo coming to like a mid-tier solution, or like maybe a dual core cryo solution.
Yeah.
Is that something you can talk about?
I can't because it's about products we haven't announced yet. But of course, so we have cryo today only in our premium tier. We have the option. We have the option to bring it down. The products that we introduced in lower tiers within, I think, February 11th, we made the announcement, don't use cryo yet, but obviously we're motivated to bring unique technology down the tiers over time. So
that's something you have done in the past. So.
Yeah, so we have
Great.
yes, we did bring it down a tier. So we have the option to bring it down, and we'll just do that evaluation, but there's nothing to announce until the chips themselves are announced. Yes. Yes.
So the 820s is in S7, sort of. It's in some A variant of it for certain markets. I've spoken to Samsung, and they said the 820 version won't be coming to Europe because of an LTE incompatibility. Firstly, that sounds a bit embarrassing for you guys if
Sure
your
does.
chip doesn't support an LTE band, and does that mean we're not really going to see 820 in Europe at all then?
You will see 820 in Europe. I can't comment on 820 in Europe in the Galaxy S7, but 820 will ship in Europe.
But it's your chip.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. Our chip will ship in Europe, and it'll support European bands.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll leave it to Samsung to decide, where they want to ship what. But I can tell you from a chip standpoint, or an RF front end, there's nothing that I'm aware of that would preclude us from shipping in any region.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
does that mean that the modem is indeed integrated on chip?
Yes, the modem's on chip, and then off chip we have the RF. And then subsequent to that is the RF front end, which has the power amplifier and the filters and so forth. So that's the whole chain, but the digital portions integrate in. You have the RF chip, you have the power amp, filters, the antenna. And Qualcomm provides all the way from the chip all the way to the antenna. Or if a customer wants to use someone else's filters or someone else's PAs, they're more than welcome to do that. But we provide the whole chain should a customer choose it. Next. Yes?
Can you talk about some of the features of the Hexagon 680 DSP and what kind of offload that can take off the CPU, for example?
Yes. So customers in general want to move any workload they can off the CPU to the GPU. You get some benefit off the GPU, and then they want to move it off the GPU to the DSP. So think of that as a cascade. In general, you get about a 5 to 10x power improvement if you can take algorithms running on the CPU and running them on the DSP. So that's what we've measured, that's what we've seen. So for example, in camera, a lot of the pre and post processing we do on the Hexagon. A lot of the advanced audio processing we do on the Hexagon. Sometimes things are distributed. Like you might run the 3A algorithms on the CPU, but you run some of the other processing on the DSP. But in general, from a customer and software perspective, the more that we can run on the DSP, the better. And that's why we put in the vector extensions. So the vector extensions basically allow you to do like linear algebra very fast and efficiently. If you're familiar with CPUs, you can think of like the Neon engine. Or a long time ago, Intel had MMX. You had this companion to the CPU. The HVX is just like that companion to the DSP, designed for specific linear algebraic operations. And that's why, if you can run those in faster cycles and the DSP is lower power, you can shut down the CPU while you're running the DSP. That's why you're seeing like a 5 to 10x power level improvement.
So do you see fixed function logic becoming more important then?
Well, it's programmable, but you mean fixed function. It's no doubt that the importance of a general purpose compute is reducing as time progresses. So if we have multiple DSPs in, we have a DSP for sensors, DSP for audio and video processing, we have a separate ISP for the camera, we actually have dual ISP, we have a GPU, we have a DSP in our codec, we have a separate hardware-based video engine, and so there's no doubt that in mobile, to get the powers to the levels you want to have as much custom silicon as possible to run those specific workloads. And as far as I know, at least if you look at anyone across the board that's building a chip, we have the most well-balanced distributed system from a power standpoint.
Last question, do you see this kind of SoC as kind of a content passport? It's so